Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the July edition of Sharpened Word Literary Happenings happening here in Andersonian Old Boys Club Ipoh. Our theme today is writings by two Nyonyas. We are very much honored to have the presence of Dr. Lee Soo Kim and Melissa Chan, both Peranakans, who are going to share with us their life stories of Peranakan Chinese in Malaysia. As you can see, we've got a very nice setup here today. Now this is a first for Sharpened Word. Never had we prepared such a setting with mannequins and slides presentation, and even, I must say this, we must thank Miss Jean Lee Siu Fong for lending us this authentic Nyonya furniture, which are being used by our two guest speakers today. I'm told it is more than 60 years old. As well as, please remember as well that we will have a break, and during the break, in lieu of our theme, which is the Nyonyas and the Babas, we will also serve you with some Nyonya quiz, which is a first as well for our literary happenings. Right, getting back to our speakers today. Our first speaker is Melissa Chin. Sorry, Melissa Chan. Stage fright. And old age. Melissa Chan is the housekeeper for the Baba Nyonya Heritage Museum, Melaka. So she has come all the way here to Ipoh. So that museum is where her family, the Chan family, lived since 1861. I've taken a look at her book, and the house is extraordinary, because you are taken back through time and you can have a glimpse of how the Babas and Nyonyas once lived. So Melissa is the 5th generation of the Chan family. She left her career running an advertising business in Kuala Lumpur when her uncle, who used to run the museum, passed away. And now she is part of the family endeavor. So today, she focuses her time on developing creative ways to share the story of the Peranakan Chinese in Melaka with visitors. She is currently working on an illustrative book which she hopes will inspire the younger generation to appreciate their own heritage. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Melissa Chan.
Do I need to hold the mic? Yeah, okay, I'll hold the mic. Hello, I'm Melissa Chan. Thank you for coming, and thank you, Soo Kim, for inviting me to do this. It is one of my very first few times sharing, and I'm also sharing something that's very close to my heart. And it's a work in progress. The book isn't launched yet. There isn't a title yet. Soo Kim actually asked me at the end of last year whether I wanted to do this, and I thought, okay, my book's going to be done by then. But I'm sure some of you who are writers understand this process. It takes a little bit longer. But I thought that, yes, as I prayed about it, I felt, okay, I should take this step. So I took the step of faith. So please bear with me. It is a work in progress. That's why it's named Piecing the Past and Present for the Future, and brackets, work in progress. So and it's a journey. So I think that was part of the reason why I wanted to also share that. I think a lot of the times we see the finished product, but the journey is also just as important, and I just want to honor that process that I'm in at the moment. Yeah. This is the house that I work in. This is my great-grandfather, Chan Cheng Siu. So He bought the house in 1861. He's a planter, and like many Babas who in Melaka accumulated wealth through rubber. So he bought this house, and I think at that time there were no offices, so the house was actually a showpiece for his business and trade. Just to share with you also, my dad is here, and so my dad is actually the last generation to have stayed in the house. My dad, Mr. Henry Chan. So this is really a very personal story for me. It's the reason why I came on board to do this was actually to honor my family as well, and to spend time with my uncles and my father and my mom as well. My mom's not getting on with age, but they are. So I wanted to capture stories before it's too late. So yeah, just the next slide. This is my uncle. Uncle Kim Lei started the museum started the house as a museum in 1985. So it opened up in 1985. He's since passed on 3 years ago. Next slide. This is what the house looks like for visitors who come in. It is as Cheng Siu lived in the house. So 4 generations lived in the house, but most of what you see when you come to the house is what it was like between 1800s to 1900s. So a lot of the journey of me uncovering the past was also understanding the context in which they lived in, because I was born in Kuala Lumpur, so I didn't actually know very much about Peranakan Chinese culture in Melaka. And now going back, it's really been asking a lot of people and listening to a lot of stories as well. So the next slide. This is the kitchen, my favorite portion of the house. It's also as what the family lived, how it was when the family lived in the house. The house is an ancestral house, which most of the houses on Huron Street are. They are called Rumah Abus, meaning ash house. And so the family still comes and celebrates our ancestry 7 times a year, and they call it Semayang. So it's a very important part of Peranakan Chinese culture, ancestral worship. And my immediate family now, we're Christians, but I personally believe that to honor our heritage is it is something very important to do. So, and the past. Next slide. So this is my family, my dad's family. There are 8 children. Cheng Siu had only 1 son, and this is his wife. A lot of intermarriage in that time. So he married Nyonya, who was a couple of doors down from the street. And they had 8 children. My dad's not here. Maybe you could ask the story of why he's not here later on. But part of the journey of me uncovering the past is also, so this is my uncle, and let's see the next photo. This is him when he was a young boy. And we found photographs of them when they were young in the house. And that got me to thinking as to what was it like when they lived in the house. Because most visitors who come into the house now, they just see the architecture and it looks very beautiful, but really what was it like living in the house? And I wanted those stories to come out a bit more, because I think that's where the heart of a house really is. It's when it becomes a home. Yeah, so I interviewed some of my aunties before they passed on. And I think, so you notice that we've placed my dad there. He wasn't there in the photo, but I think that's something that imagination and illustration can do, which photography, no matter how you Photoshop it, it just doesn't seem the same. So I'm working with a young Nyonya illustrator. She is from Melaka as well, has been working in Kuala Lumpur, but this has been really a journey and a process for all of us. And I just found out that Lat is an Anderson old boy, so it's a lot of pressure here. But anyway, So this is just a work in progress illustration of what, her name is Priti Nair. This is what she's been doing. So we've been working on this together for the past 7 years. I'm going to share 2 stories from this book, which does not have a name yet. Anyway. Okay, so the stories that I got from the book, or for the book, were very simple stories. I think a lot of times, a lot of the research that we see of Peranakan Chinese culture is a lot about the material culture. So what I wanted to present was more of the living culture, and I think Sukim's stories were very inspiring for me also because they're more anecdotal. So they bring the characters to life, and I think these are ways in which the younger generation appreciates that more because it's a connection of meaning and identity as well. So I'm hoping that these stories will bring that to life. So, okay. I shall just share with you the synopsis of the book. And okay, so it's time. How has time affected the Babas and Nonyas? A community that had its heyday before World War II, known for their richly opulent lifestyles, the Peranakan Chinese were termed as the King's Chinese. It was this close allegiance to their colonial English masters that secured wealth and status for many Peranakan Chinese. Through stories of my own family's histories, interviewing my aunties and uncles, I have discovered a generation removed from its bling and fancy parties. A generation that started at the cusp of the war, survived the war, and then assimilated into the rest of modern society as the years went by. To experience this community is also to see it in relation to other communities that existed together with it at the same time. Featuring anecdotal stories of their history and journey from pre-war to afterward, my main aim is to shed light on how one Malaysian family has held on to its roots as they began to form new identities through the passage of time. Yep. And the first story is called Nia's Bling Gone Missing. So it's set in the house. Okay. It starts. It was not unusual to see a gold or silver smith working inside the houses of Huron Street. They would be specially commissioned by matriarchs of the household to set intricately designed jewelry pieces such as croissants or brooches, rings, pendants, earrings, or tiaras for weddings. These gold and silver smiths were also skilled in designing, often working with the ladies of the household to develop designs which the Nyonya had either seen or could imagine. My name is Irene Chan Kim Hwa, or Bungsu, which means youngest one. I was always teased by my siblings to be Nia's favorite, the anak biji mata. When Nia passed away, my sisters and I inherited many of her finest jewelry. This is the story I remember of one particular time the goldsmith came to our house. 9 a.m. The sound of the doorbell shrills through the house. I excitedly paddle to the front door on my bicycle to see who it is. Closely behind me, Amache swiftly maneuvers her way in her wooden clogs that make that tak-yak sound. Once again, she beats me to the front door. Amache swings the large, heavy doors open with an air of authority. From the 5-foot way, a stout, middle-aged man faces her. It is Akam the goldsmith. He is dressed in his usual shorts and white Pagoda brand t-shirt. His posture is tilted to one side from the weight of the bag he carries. Akam's friendly and gentle demeanor is always a welcome sight in our house. His round, scratched glasses sit perched at the edge of his oily nose, his receding hairline a telltale sign of his years. Akam peers through his glasses, looks down at me and says, "Bungsu, lu suah makan?" He asks if I've already eaten, as he totters in with his bag of tools, trying to keep in step with Amache, who is marching him into the house. "Chak-yak, chak-yak, chak-yak," go her wooden clogs. In response to Akam's question, I ring my bicycle and shout, "Sudah," for I had already eaten. I paddle closely behind them. Akam shifts a table to where the light shines down into the courtyard airwell. The wooden table is scratched from years of wear and tear and marked permanently with black burnings from his carbide torch. Many of the finest croissant brooches, earrings, and rings have been carefully set at this very table. Akam lovingly takes his tools out from the leather bag one at a time in an orderly fashion and then sits them upon the table. He settles onto the worn-down stool. Eyepiece in place and back hunched, he is now ready to set an extravagant diamond croissant that Nia has commissioned. This piece will surely be the talk of the next wedding she attends. In the meantime, some of his children are also playing hide and seek today. Brothers Kimson and Henry are crouching behind the planter's chair where Ba is sitting. Dolly and Touchy Baby are squatting behind the mahjong table. Harry is nowhere to be seen. I ride my bicycle around the courtyard airwell looking for my siblings, gleefully ringing the bell. I count, satu, ring, goes the bell. Dua, ring, tiga, ring, empat, right up to 10. Unbeknownst to me, my cheeky brother Harry has snuck into the small cupboard underneath the staircase, near to where Akam is working. As I cycle near Akam, a wild-haired shadow suddenly pounces out from beneath the staircase. Boo! Harry shouts loudly. Ah! I scream in shock and tumble over, losing my balance. My bicycle goes straight into Akam's table with a crash, boom, bang. Everything is everywhere. I am on the floor entangled with the bicycle. Everyone rushes out from their hiding place to see what the commotion is. Nia huffs down the staircase. Amache clatters back in from the kitchen. My bottom hurts. I begin to wail loudly, and Nia comes over to pick me up. I cling to her, and large sobs wash up from within me. She holds me tight, and through my tears I see Harry. He dares not look at Nia. In an effort to redeem himself, he hurriedly gets on his hands and knees and starts to pick up Akam's pincer, hammer, saw, and magnifying glass. The rest of my siblings are frozen in quiet apprehension. From a distance, I can hear Amache muttering under her breath, just loud enough for Nia to hear. Kui, got devil, she says, referring to all its children. Akam picks up the wax tablet, which should have encased the bullion diamonds. In fearful silence, Harry watches Akam count the bullion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Uh-oh, one is missing. Harry knows that if he doesn't find it, the punishment would be severe. The house goes into a frantic search for the missing diamond. Dolly looks behind the staircase, Henry scans every square tile underneath the tables, Kimson opens every cupboard he sees, and even puts his hands into the potted plants. Harry stares down the drain pipe of the airwell. He grimaces and then reluctantly slides his slender arm down the drain pipe, wincing with disgust as his hands brush against the slimy walls along the drain. I continue to cling to Nia, frightened that if I move, I may get a scolding too. After what seems like an eternity of us staring at Harry's scrunched up face as he stretches down as far as he can reach, he finally seems to have found something. Ada, he shouts. The precious stone has been found. Everyone sighs in palpable relief. My older sisters help to push the table back, and Akam slowly picks up his tools from the floor, resettling himself. Nia watches on, and I continue to cling on to her. Harry looks just a tad bit remorseful and still has a twinkle in his eye. The rest of the children follow Amache and Ninik Cho into the kitchen to continue playing, and the day moves on. So that's the story of, that's the anecdotal part of the story. And what happened was, I actually wanted to also find out, because this story happened when I spoke with one of my aunties, and they said that the goldsmiths used to come into the house to be commissioned to make croissants, and so I wanted to find out what was the goldsmith industry like in Melaka, and how did they interact with the people as well. So I went to interview two goldsmiths, and yep, this is a modern day jewelry maker, and the one on top is a goldsmith. And these are just some of the croissants, and this is the wax tablet where the bullion would have been kept. So I think one of the interesting things that I realized in terms of jewelry and how women, what was the significance of jewelry to women back in the day. And I think one of the things that I found out was that while men had access to land, property and businesses, a woman very rarely would have been bequeathed land title deeds. Her dowry during her wedding and the jewelry she acquired during her life became a form of insurance for her, should her husband or sons prove to be unreliable providers. For a young lady to receive jewelry from someone older was considered a privilege and honor, and was seen as a sign of love between one generation to the next. I thought that was a very interesting insight, and I thought that that's what goldsmiths actually facilitated as well. So when I went to speak to one of the goldsmiths, this gentleman down here, Mr. Lee, who has, I think interviewing people in Melaka, has really opened my heart to Melakans and what it means to be in a smaller town as well. I think I didn't grow up with that, and everybody's just so eager to share their knowledge. So what he shared with me was that, he shared with me that most of the goldsmiths don't want to share their knowledge unless you are their son. So this has also been a challenge for the goldsmith industry in Melaka, and I think generally in the rest of Malaysia as well, because so the early jewelers used by the Peranakan Chinese community were Malay gold and silversmiths, and then later on there was this influx of Chinese smiths that came in, and most of them were of Hakka descent. But because it was such a secretive industry, people like, if you go to the next slide, so this is a very young, if you come to Melaka, Song Shin works at this goldsmith place on Jonker Street, and he's probably one of the only ones that still do, he doesn't do the intricate artisanal part because he didn't learn it. His father took care of the business but didn't learn how to do artisanal, the artisan of smithing. It was his grandfather that started it. So what happened was he had to go to Singapore, he had to go to Terengganu, and finally he said it was a kind Malay goldsmith who actually taught him some tricks of the trade, but unfortunately so much of this is dying. And so what Mr. Lai, who's the other goldsmith, said was that it's unfortunate that nowadays everything is modern and it's machine cut. So you lose that relationship between the goldsmith and the Nyonya who would have commissioned it. There would have been more of a relationship between them, and so I felt that was very sad, listening to a younger generation who's not able to actually learn something that he wants to learn. And I wanted to share that story out as well. So that's something that I'm documenting in the book. And then also, I found out that the rich were able to put their gold into banks like Overseas Chinese Bank, but the poor had to go to pawn shops. And I noticed in Ipoh there are actually a lot of pawn shops here as well. And of my generation, I don't know what a pawn shop is. I just think that you just go and trade. I also think it's a bit, sorry if anybody's from pawn shop, but it just, Anyway, so I went to interview a pawn shop owner, and this was what he shared with me. While the wealthier could afford to keep their gold in banks, the everyday person went to a pawnbroker. Pawnbrokers served two main functions. One was to act as a safe harbor for gold, and another to lend at fixed interest rate. Mr. Lai is a Melakan pawnbroker who comes from two generations of the trade. He shares that one day an amateur came to our shop with a Milo tin filled with gold. She deposited her gold with us and went on holiday back to her village in China. When she came back, we returned her Milo tin to her. Another story depicting how pawnbrokers operated is of a Malay chap who used to come to Mr. Lai's shop every day without fail. He exchanged this tattered sarong for a loan of 5 straight dollars. He would use the money to buy bananas to sell, and at the end of the day, he would come back to buy his sarong back for an interest of 15 cents more. Mr. Lai adds, I have always asked my dad why he allowed the man to give us his tattered sarong when we had no use for it, and my dad said, this is his livelihood, it is important to him. So I just felt that that's like a microfinance of the old days, and this is something which I think a lot of our younger generation don't know about. So I wanted to share those sort of stories with them. And hopefully for their parents to share it with them, rather. Okay, so the next story revolves around Capitol Theatre, and I think film was always something that I enjoyed when I was young, and I also wanted to find out what was yes, the Peranakan Chinese. I mean, it's a shared culture. Everybody goes to the theatre, whether you're Peranakan Chinese, Melaka Chiti, Hakka, we all love being entertained. So I wanted to share a story about going to the theatre and what was entertainment like in pre-war to just after the war. Okay, so this is Capitol Theatre. It's now a very rundown building in Malacca. It was one of the very early theatres in Malacca. So by the 1940s, Malacca had two majestic buildings sitting along Wolferson Road, which is today Jalan Bandahara. They were Capitol and Savoy Theatre. Savoy was an older building formerly known as the Rialto Theatre. When Capitol Theatre was completed in 1931, it was the talk of the town. Architects from Singapore finally crafted its majestic Art Deco exterior, and the theatre featured a state-of-the-art sound system, which of course was preferred by us youngsters. This modern theatre was the brainchild of Baba Tan Su Sim, son of the prominent Baba Tan Jiak Kim. In order to cater to a younger audience, theatres offered special ticket prices for matinee shows, and for just 25 cents, we were able to gain access to an afternoon of wonderment and delight. My name is Henry Chan Kim Cheng, the youngest of four boys. As we were growing up, one of our favorite pastimes was to watch shows screened at our local theatres. On this particularly hot day, my brothers Ako Kim Lei, Kim Sin, and myself are sprawled lazily along the Balai Papan, a wide wooden platform perfect for lounging. Nearby to us, Sister Bong Su practices her embroidery work. Ako is the eldest and leader of us boys. He strucks up the idea of going to the cinema. Kim Sin and I eagerly agree. We had heard that the latest Tarzan film was out, and boy, did we want to watch it. Sister Bong Su is all ears and asks if she can follow too. Us boys take one look at her and remark, "Lu, tok sa ikut. Nanti kita jaga lu." Sorry, I don't really speak Peranakan Chinese, so I don't have the slang. I think Sukim's better at this. We did not want to be responsible for her. She could not follow us. Before she runs with her complaint to Nia, brothers and I have already made our dash out of the house. We bicycle our way to Capitol Theatre and get there just before noon. When we arrive, there is a large crowd gathered in front of the ticket counter at the box office. No such thing as queuing politely here. Everyone pushes forward, trying to cram their hands into a tiny little hole in the wall to get their tickets. Inside the booth, a Chinese man sits, coolly collecting money. Ako commands Brother Kim Sin and I to wait by the side. He then briefly marches into the crowd and disappears. Kim Sin and I are left to fidget in anticipation. We tiptoe, peer through the crowd, and scan the many upraised hands trying to get a glimpse of Ako. Time ticks on as we wait for Ako. A scolding from Nia for having abandoned Sister Bong Su possibly awaits us back home, so we want to make this afternoon happen. In the sweltering heat, our hopes wilt. The crowd thins out and the successful purchasers stream their way into the hall, ticket stubs in hand. Kim Sin and I begin to feel despondent. But then we see Ako emerging with a triumphant grin, clutching exactly 3 tickets in hand. Hurrah! Extremely pleased with ourselves and proud of our eldest brother, we make our way to the cinema hall, first stopping by the Kacang Putih man to buy some snacks. Then we walk through the doorways into a large hall 2 stories high. Slow, rotating ceiling fans drone above our heads as an elderly man ushers us to our second-class wooden seats, 2 rows from the screen. This is an area dedicated to the youngsters, or as some would call us, hooligans. Every one of us in front is forced to tilt our heads back at 45-degree angles just to catch the bottom half of the movie screen. Towards the back sit older folks puffing away on their 555 cigarettes. As the crowd settles in, I take a glance back and upwards towards the projector as it starts up. It splutters to life. The brown curtains open and a beam of light cuts through the smoke-filled air. Then it blacks out. The hall protests with loud boos and oys. After a few attempts, it comes to life again and all clap in unison. something magical comes alive in the hall and the first images flicker onto screen. It is showtime. Everyone in the hall claps wildly as a young Tarzan comes swinging onto the screen, followed by his trusty chimpanzee Cheetah. Jane, the love of his life, appears and Tarzan swings down to scoop her off her feet and into the treetops. Stories of Tarzan fighting jungle lions and elephants enthrall each of us in the audience. These are just some of the scenes that captivate our minds this day, transporting our hearts into another world far, far away from the hard wooden seats of the cinema. So that's the story of Capitol Theatre and what was the experience like. And I got this story from my dad, who shared with me, just asking him, what do you remember about the fans? Because when we went, as you can see in the slide before, it was just an empty hall. So we had to really fill in more of the gaps from memory. And it's interesting working with the older generation, because every time you do an edit, then maybe a few months later they'll be, oh yeah, I remember this, and I have to go back and edit. But I think one of the things from observation that I realized was very different, because so I had experienced the cinema, but I think most of the younger generation probably just experience cineplexes now. And one of the major differences between cineplexes and cinemas of yesteryear was the kacang putih man and the snack section. And so that's what I wanted to just highlight. Snacks like chiku, nangka, pineapple, apples, and also this drink called the ham saleh drink. I don't know whether in Ipoh you have it, but in Melaka they call them the saleh jo. So if you see over there on the left side of the screen, they're actually these push cart stalls that used to sit outside the cinemas. And they were independently owned push cart stalls. And so I interviewed a born and bred Malacan. His name is Colin Goh, and he works at number 8 here in Melaka. And so what he shares and what he remembers of the cinemas of his childhood in the 1950s was the Amsaleh store was always something we looked forward to. The colors of the fruits and snacks thrilled us youngsters as we carefully picked out our delights for the afternoon shows. A tube of chocolates, which was then imported, was considered a treat, and we would savor these color-coated Smarties slowly throughout the show. So I'm sure you notice now that the snacks that we get are more popcorn. They're more of an American flavor. And I thought it was really charming that yesteryear's cinemas in Malaya had a very local flavor to them. So I don't know what happened in the transition, but anyway. Another thing that Colin remembers is that sometimes in the middle of the night, when they went for a midnight show or a night show, there would be a flow of urine that would stream through their feet. And he said perhaps the families were too afraid to use the toilet situated outside the cinema. So nonetheless, it formed part of the whole experience of movie going back in the day. And I thought that was worth putting in, because you really don't get that nowadays in a cineplex. It's a lot more sophisticated. So I also went to interview an Saleh Jo, because I don't know what an Saleh Jo is. So if you look at the next slide, it's basically a fruit stall, but with a very fancy name. And so Cindy and her 3 brothers have been manning this store for over 40 years. Their parents actually started it. So you could say that they're almost a heritage business as well. Situated at the corner of Trampera Road, which is today Jalan Sengkera and Om Kim Wee, their parents started a drink store, first outside Rex Theatre. And she and her brothers grew up helping out and later continued the business with expanded offerings. They now do cut and pickled fruits to tidbits. And when theatres became less popular, Cindy and her brothers moved their pushcart to now where its current location is. From Rex, they moved it to here, outside a nightclub, and they would actually, it was a hard life because they live in the Taman, which is a bit further down, and every day you will see them pushing the pushcart all the way here. And when there was the nightclub, they would open until 2 a.m. and then during the day they would be cutting fruits. They're not cheap. It's 5 ringgit for a pack of fruits. So They are, yeah. But anyway, when I asked her, she said that making money is hard. Cindy says, today children prefer 9-to-5 jobs. Who wants to do this? She says as she pours more ice into the container displaying cut fruits. And I did ask her about the Ham Saleh drink, which is where they got their name from. And she said, no longer sell. Today these pickled drinks are not good for us. Last time it was okay, less chemicals. Yeah, so that's a little bit of the journey that I've been taking, kind of very impromptu, going and interviewing people as the opportunity presents itself. So if you go to the next one, I also just wanted to share that what's happening in Melaka, which I really hope will not happen in Ipoh, is that there's a lot of development that's happening. If anybody's been to Melaka of late, so places like Capitol Theatre are slowly getting lost, and the voices of what represents them is becoming a lot softer when we see a lot of large developments and modernity that's coming in. So voices from the street, which talks about Melaka, was one of my inspirations as well. If you go to the next slide, I just wanted to show you the development that's happening in Melaka. I mean, just coming into Ipoh, I'm thankful that I don't see that. I still see the old charm, but I know that Ipoh is it's going to explode, I think, over the next few years. So I hope that the stakeholders here will really hold on to what is important as you also talk about change. Yeah, I mean, I came into Melaka and it is, it's very sad, but I understand that development has to happen, but at what cost? So I hope that these stories will somehow inspire and also plant seeds in the younger generation to know what it was like. I mean, everybody just walks past pawnbrokers to go to the chicken rice stall nowadays because that's what's more important, and they don't see the stories of the pawnbrokers. So I think those are things that I'm trying to highlight through the museum also. This is the Portuguese settlement. Another thing that we found in Capitol Theatre was a lot of rubber gum. Glue, I'm sure everybody knows what this is about. A lot of youth sniff glue. So you can see the change from stories of children that would, you know, spend their time at matinee shows, and that was their form of entertainment. These are definitely social issues that are happening as development happens in a town like Melaka. Are the people really ready for the development? I think these are just questions that are on my heart. Yeah. Okay, so the book is, there are 3 parts to it. Part 1 is talking about the family before the war. What was it like before the war? So Nya's bling gone missing, the goldsmiths coming into the house. This was something which you would have seen more before the war. After the war, as I said, it really changed and leveled up this Peranakan Chinese elite community where everybody had to farm, actually. So the stories that I captured during the war was them farming. And so there are 12 stories altogether, and each one is illustrated. So during the war is how did they survive, what food did they live off, and what was the Japanese occupation of Malaya like as well, specifically to Melaka. And then part 3 is what happened after the war. So they're a little bit older here, and there's stories of what was Sambut Tahun, which is Chinese New Year. What was that like? What was the education of the Baba Nyonyas like in the wider context of Melaka as well? And then Chacha of a Baba is what was the entertainment like? Because they were very influenced by musical influences, bangsawan, keroncong. There's so much influence from the Portuguese and from the Indian community as well. And then Aceh gets married, it's about the matrimonial ceremony. So it's a mix of Peranakan Chinese culture, but within the wider context of what was it like living in Melaka. That's it. Thank you.